I'm on over.
We'll get the workshop started. Thanks for coming out. My name's Tim Roach. I'm the director of the Nashua Regional Planning Commission. Our agenda tonight is in front of you. We have our presentation plan that should take about 20, 30 minutes, depending on how quickly we move through it. Questions are welcome as we go, if you want to take it that way. But then we're going to open up into a discussion about regional transportation, and then have you take part in a little exercise that's in front of you that we'll explain later. But for tonight, I wanted to fill you in on a little bit about what we do at NRPC. And tonight we're here as your Metropolitan Planning Organization, or MPO. There's a lot of acronyms. I'll try not to use them all. But the Metropolitan Planning Organization is a role that NRPC plays to really administer a federal transportation planning process. And the reason for that is really to give the communities of the region a voice in decisions and the investments that are made in the transportation system. We work cooperatively with the DOT, with Federal Highway, with Turnpikes, Federal Transit Administration, and the Nashua Transit System, and bring the voice of the communities to those folks so they understand where the people believe the investment should be made. Tonight, what we're doing is we're kicking off what is a 2-year transportation planning cycle. And really the goal is just to get the conversation started as to where we think the investment should be made over the next couple of years, and to try to align what we need to do in the region with the fiscal reality that the state's facing. We're at the very beginning of the 2-year cycle, as I mentioned, or if you want to look at it the other way, we're at the very end of the former 2-year cycle. The governor is going to sign the 10-year plan tomorrow. So what we're doing is we're starting over with a look at our long-range transportation plan. And up on the screen, it's just showing a copy or the cover of our 2015 to 2040 long-range transportation plan that we adopted at the end of, or beginning of 2015. This document sort of sits on top of all the planning documents for transportation planning. It looks at a 20-year planning horizon and really sets the goals and objectives in those long-range projects that we want to try to accomplish over that 20-plus year time frame. We use this to feed the state's 10-year plan. So the long-range plan sort of holds the projects in that we know we need over the course of the 20-year window. And from that, we try to set priorities and move those down into the state's 10-year plan. Is everyone familiar with the 10-year plan? You've heard of it? It's a long process. It's really a state law that's run through the DOT in cooperation with the regional planning commissions and the Governor and Council Advisory Commission on Intermodal Transportation, or GASIT. And over that course of this 2 years, they'll work through a very public process and take projects that we have in our long-range plan and move them into the next 10-year plan. And then finally, the final step in the process is to take the 10-year plan and focus in on the first 4 years of that document. And that goes into what we call a transportation improvement program. And those of you that are in municipal government, you can think of it like a CIP, or a capital improvement program. If it's a federal aid project and it's not in this document, it doesn't happen. This is the document that makes the sort of the pavement really meet the road. And it's one of the ones we work on cooperatively with the DOT in our communities to make sure that projects are actually getting implemented in the region. So the long-range plan that we just adopted at the beginning of 2015, that came out of a process that some of you may be aware of. It was the Granite State Future project. We used that process, that Granite State Future project, to really combine resources with the other regional planning commissions to try and find some efficiencies and make sure that we're all working together. And one of the best things that came out of it was we had an enormous amount of public input into that process. It's probably the most we've had in many, many years from a planning perspective. I think there were about 1,500 to 1,800 individual comments, a lot of them relating to transportation. We heard a lot about the state and the concerns about an aging population, how people are going to get around as they get older, and if they want to stay in their home, what are they going to do if they can't drive? So we heard a lot about public transit. We heard some talk about rail. East-west travel, when you think about just the, the status quo of building for more vehicle capacity, getting around east-west across the region becomes a big issue, has been for a long time with 101A, getting across the river from Hudson over to Nashua and whatnot. Heard a lot about intermodal transportation, bikes, pedestrian needs, and then trying to find a way to fund all this in a sustainable manner. I mean, that's really been the problem for a long time, and that's going to continue to be an issue as we look into the future. The other part of this was to come up with a vision, which we did, and I'm not going to read this to you, one, because my eyes are so bad that I can't even see that from here. But nonetheless, the idea was to have a multimodal transportation system that has access for all users, keeping the economic growth as a priority, making sure that we're keeping the mobility of the region in place and focusing on public health and the environment. And again, making sure that there's sustainable funding to do what we want to accomplish over the course of the 20 plus years ahead of us. The goals that came out of it were the very high, simple goals of maintaining mobility, maintaining the quality of life for the region, that sustainable system that we can fund, and then actually implementing the projects that we want to get done as a region. So we have a vision, we have goals, we have objectives that we want to accomplish. But what we want to do is make sure that the projects that we have in mind and the projects that have been listed in our documents for many, many years are consistent with these goals, and we wanted to start that conversation tonight and get some input from all of you. So what I'm going to do is I'll turn it over to Jen to talk about what goes into the long-range planning process, from data to all the various analyses that we do. And then I'll come back and we'll talk a little bit about the projects.
Great. So as Tim mentioned, we do kind of a holistic look at some of the just basic demographic data that is out there, so we can make sure that we're pairing our transportation needs with our population who lives in our communities, but also looking at making sure that we've got adequate capacity for projected population in our communities. So one of the things that we know overall is that we're just not seeing the growth that we were seeing in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. We've really tapered off. And the other piece of the demographics that we look at is the age of our population. And one of the things looking at it, we know we've aged as a population. The baby boomers are moving forward. They're one of the largest portions of our overall population. And so it tends to shift that median age. You can see about 40 years ago, our median age was in the early 20s. We're now into our early 40s. And then the other piece of the data analysis that we look at are our underserved populations. And this is from the perspective of who's not getting to the table during the planning process, so we make sure we're taking everyone's needs into consideration, but also what are those unique needs of those individuals. So we're looking at poverty levels, folks that need access to a job may not be able to get to the job, households without a vehicle, and then limited English proficiency. The other piece of it is housing growth, and so looking at where new homes are being built. And so part of this is being able to understand where new trips might be originating from. So as we're planning forward, figuring out where we're going to have increased demand on our transportation network, we want to know where that growth is occurring. So new housing units equal new origins in our travel modeling. Another piece that we look at is the just environmentally sensitive areas. What are the impacts that any transportation improvements might have? Also just making sure we work to mitigate any potential impacts. The other side of it, I mentioned new homes as kind of that driver of origins for new trips. destinations, where are people going, land use change. And so looking at some of our commercial development that we're seeing in the region and seeing how we've grown over time to understand where people are going within our region. So with that, I'm going to kind of give it to Julie to take it the next step on the driving patterns.
Hi, I'm Julie Chismas, Transportation Planner with NRPC. Thank you for joining us tonight. What we have up here for you are the commuting patterns, and as I think a lot of us know, we make a lot of trips south to Boston and the Massachusetts area when we're working, and a large portion of our population also heads north to Manchester and Merrimack from this area, from Nashua up. Also, where people are coming from is something that we look at. We want to make sure that people can get to their jobs and that towns can get the employees that they need. So we want to make sure that the system is efficient for everybody to get to and from work. One thing that we notice is that a lot of people who work in your towns actually live in your towns as well. I'm one of them. I work and live in Merrimack. My 6-mile commute is awesome. It's much better than when I was driving to Cambridge. A lot of people also work within the region. And like I said, we do have the Massachusetts and the north to Manchester population moving as well. And that's why we see increased traffic volumes over time on the Effie Everett Turnpike. This is one of the few routes in the region that we're actually seeing travel demand grow. Travel counts, average annual daily traffic counts are going up. These are 24-hour counts, so this isn't showing you your daily peak, but it is showing you that over time since 1990, traffic volumes are going up on the turnpike. We do look at speed on the turnpike as well, and what this data shows, it's data that's based on cell phone and commercial fleet GPS data, and it shows how much time it takes people to traverse a section of road, so we can kind of get a sense of the speed that people are going. And again, it kind of gives us that objective viewpoint on what we all kind of know and see out there when we're driving. But on the north graph, we're looking at Effie Everett Turnpike, northbound on weekdays, and sure enough, in the afternoon, when you drop a lane between exits 10 and 12, traffic slows down, and that, I mean, you just can't see it any more clearly than on that graph. Likewise, southbound in the morning, we have a little bit of slowdown. I'm only showing between exits 10 and 12. South in Nashua, where we have the 5 lanes, people are cruising pretty fast. I don't know if you've ever been through there, but 55, I've never seen very few people go 55, so that section's moving well. On DW Highway, traffic's been pretty flat, not seeing a lot of variation. Unfortunately, I don't have the speed data for these roads. We only get that data for certain types of roadways, roads on the National Highway System, and DW Highway doesn't fall into that classification. But we can look at the 24-hour counts, and we're seeing that they're pretty flat. On 3A, again, not a lot of growth in the 25 years of traffic counts that we're showing. It's been pretty flat. But we do have that hourly variation. This is, again, a road that we do have this speed data for, and we're seeing, again, the slowdown during the AM and PM peaks. 111, flat when you look at the 24 hours. Morning and afternoon slowdown. So again, all stuff that we know, but it's nice to have the data to put to that so that when we go and seek federal funds, we can say, no, look, really, it's not just what people feel. 101 and 101A are east-west corridors, flat. So in addition to volumes, we look at the conditions on the roads. We look at bridge conditions. Maybe, you know, you want to be thinking about the bridges that the municipalities are responsible for, and starting to think about when you need to get your bridges repaired. The pavement conditions up there are on state roads. We are working with our local communities to gather local pavement road data, and hopefully, you know, a couple years we'll have the map filled in a little more, but for now we can see where the pavement's deteriorating and where we should be really focusing some efforts. Crashes. We get data from reportable crashes from the state DOT and the Department of Safety. We look at the total number of crashes. This is showing 10 years of crash data. And what I've highlighted here are the number 1 and number 2 crash types that are happening in each community. We look at where the fatal crashes are happening. If there's a high volume in one area, clearly we need to get out there and see what we can do to reduce the number of fatal crashes. And also the number of severe injury crashes. And our bicyclists and pedestrians have accidents, and we read about them in the paper, so we want to know where are they happening. Is it happening in any one concentrated area that we can work on? The numbers in red are the fatalities associated with those accidents involving bicyclists and pedestrians. And as you can see, where we have the higher volumes of cars, we have higher volumes of crashes. And when you want to avoid a crash, take the bus. I'll hand it over to Tim.
Yeah. So I'll pick it up from here and just bring us a little further along. So transit is something we look at in our long-range planning outlook, and what we have up here is just to give you a sense what's available in the region for transit service, and starting off with what we call demand response service. That's the type of bus service where people actually call into Nashua Transit and essentially schedule a ride. It's in Hudson and Merrimack. Nashua Transit has a contract with the towns, and it's focused on folks that are eligible for ADA, Americans with Disability type trips. So if they're ADA eligible, that's the focus of those rides. In Nashua itself, the city is required to cover, provide those types of rides, that demand response service, within 3/4 of a mile of every single fixed route bus route, which essentially covers the whole city, and again, focused on ADA type rides. The western part of the region, that's sort of that tan color on the slides, is served by the Sauhegan Valley Transportation Collaborative. That was a grassroots organization that developed, recognizing that they had a large number of elderly and disabled folks out in the region that just couldn't get to their medical trips. We've worked really closely with that group to establish a demand response type service to ensure that we can get as many people as possible that are elderly or disabled to their various medical appointments in Nashua, and also anywhere within that tan shaded region. So it's been a pretty successful service. I think they've had about 21,000 rides as of at least April of this year, and it started about 5 or 6 years ago. So it's been pretty successful, and it's had quite a bit of growth. What you usually see around, if you're over in Nashua, is the fixed route system. Those are the bigger buses that run up and down various roads on a regularly scheduled basis. Just gives you a sense, the city has very good coverage, particularly for New Hampshire, for transit service. You can get just about anywhere in town. They also have night service after between 7 and 10 p.m. Again, covering a good chunk of the city. And the bar graph on the right there, upper right, just shows you the growth in ridership over the last 15 or so years. Gives you a good sense that the ridership's been up quite a bit, and it's been continuing on that upward trajectory. So right now, the funding for transit is received directly by the Nashua Transit System. They're a direct recipient. The city of Nashua pays the match to offset the federal dollars for operations. It's a 50-50 match. If they're going to buy a new bus, it's an 80-20 match, but the city right now covers that cost. If we want to talk about, and I think we may at some point talk about expansion of transit around the region, that's where the real rub is. It's really limited by the amount of federal dollars available and the willingness of either the state to step up or the local communities to step up to pay that match. And that's a heavy lift for a lot of towns, and we understand that. So the projects that we have in the plan, this is you'll see this on your table as well. But this is just to give you a sense of what's in the 10-year plan that's about to be adopted, or signed into law tomorrow by the governor. First 10 years, we have a pretty good spread of projects across the region. We start looking beyond that, the outer years, beyond 10 years out to 2040, you can see the concentration of projects shifts in towards the urban area. There's very little going on in the western part of the region. And I think there's more needs than what we're really capturing here in the outer years, and that's some of what we can talk about tonight. And we'll talk about a few of those now if we'd like. So this is a big one. This is the whole east-west travel issue across the region, and I think this is one that really resonates here in town, as well as in Nashua or in Litchfield. Getting back and forth across the river is really constrained. It's really limited right now to the Sagamore Bridge, the Taylor Falls Bridge, and if you go further north, just outside the region, we have the new airport access road, which has been great. But what we're seeing is that there's still a lot of traffic that's funneled through Hudson to the Taylor Falls Bridge or trying to get down to the Sagamore Bridge. Legacy project, circumferential highway, has been off the table for a long time now. Hudson has looked into the idea of a parkway or a connector along the circumferential highway right-of-way, and we're showing that there in the bottom right of that aerial photo as the sort of the Hudson connector. We show a bridge across the Merrimack River somewhere to the north. We don't have a specific location right now. I think we're roughly showing where the original circumferential highway was located in this particular map. And then the work on East Hollis Street that the city of Nashua is looking into, all the way, the whole corridor of East Hollis Street right up to the Taylor Falls Bridge. Rough estimates, if you were to build a bridge from DW Highway over to 102, if you were to build that Hudson connector and do all the improvements on East Hollis Street, you're talking about $228 million worth of projects as a rough estimate in 2017 dollars. It's not going to happen in 2017. So you have to inflate that up about 3 to 4% per year to the construction year. So it's no small task, and it's not something that I think the region can really take lightly. But you'll see in a little bit in some of the other slides, I'm going to have Ryan come up and talk about our travel demand model. You'll see some of the benefit of these, and I think there's some pretty significant benefits if we were to have the funds to actually do all of these improvements. Another big project in the region, and particularly for the city of Nashua, is the Exit 36 southbound off-ramp. If you've been over by the Pheasant Lane Mall, if you travel down the turnpike, you'll know you can't get off at Exit 36 and get to the mall or any portion of the southern section of DW Highway. We looked at this over the last few years, did a sort of a initial planning study, and showed tremendous benefit in terms of traffic. Very significant traffic reductions on the southern portion of DW Highway and Spitbrook Road to the tune of somewhere in the range of 15–25% traffic reduction, which is large. Project cost of 2014 dollars would have been about 16 million. I think we estimated for the final project, if we were to build it in 2020, it would be closer to $20 million. You'll notice if you see that right across the center of that aerial photo, that's the state line. South of there is Massachusetts. The vast majority of the construction would have to occur in Massachusetts. So we need to do some work with our neighboring DOT, our neighboring planning commission, and as well as the higher level of state government to make sure that this is even a possibility. But it does have tremendous benefit for South Nashua and some good economic opportunity there. Rail, the Capital Corridor. As most of you know, the legislature decided not to fund the project development portion of the project. We are left with the feasibility study. The New Hampshire Rail Transit Authority has supported extending the rail all the way to Manchester. However, that project development phase has yet to be funded to actually take that project any further. I wanted to take this opportunity to clarify a few things about rail and about Nashua Regional Planning Commission. And first of all is that the Planning Commission hasn't taken a position either for or against the project at this time. And part of the reason for that is when we bring the commissioners together, when all the representatives from around the region come together and talk about this project, they don't feel that they have all the information that they need to make that decision. Folks from Hudson over the years, former Selectman Rick Maddox was very vocal about that and very clear that he felt that there needed to be more information before the commission could come out and support this project either way. So we're, hopeful that at some point, if that information becomes available, that the commission can then have a conversation and a fully informed conversation about this. And, as the staff that works for the commission, we just want to make sure that the towns know what the benefits are, what the facts are about rail. And from there, the project can either move forward or not. But I wanted to let's make sure that everyone understands where it is from a planning perspective and from where Nashua Regional Planning Commission is on this project. So with that, what I wanted to, I think the next couple slides are going to be pretty helpful for you. As you sort of flip back through these, you think about the east-west connectivity, the Exit 36 project, and to a lesser extent rail on this one, but we can talk about the model results. And I'm going to have Ryan come up. Ryan Friedman's our travel demand model expert. He's the really smart guy in the room that runs the model. So you can ask him all the tough questions. And he'll walk you through what some of the benefits are of those major projects.
Gee, thanks.
There you go.
So we did want to show you a couple slides in the model because it's really our best tool for taking a lot of this data that we've been showing you as it exists today, traffic volumes, travel time, delay, congestion, and projecting it forward at a future date depending on the presence or lack of certain projects and growth of population and economic growth and things like that. So this map on the screen now is kind of our classic, we call it a hot and cold map, where we look at base year data, which we've calibrated the model to represent current conditions on the ground and current traffic volumes using census data, other census-related packages, our parcel data, so we know where the households are, and the census data tells us how to estimate how many vehicles each household has available and what they might do for a living and where they might need to travel to do a job or to run an errand or anything like that, and how long those trips traditionally take. And the software kind of moves trips back and forth until it finds that balance, and you calibrate it to all those traffic counts that are currently out there. And from there, once you have a base year calibrated, you can, like I said, add future data. So we could take the population projections that we've developed in-house for 2030, 2040, various years. We can take known developments that our communities tell us are going to happen in targeted areas. And we can add, subtract, change the layout of the road system and see what all those things do to traffic in any future year that we have the numbers for. So our hot and cold map here, anything in a blue shade is a road segment where traffic is dropping under whatever scenario we've chosen to look at. In this case, we're looking at what happens in 2040 with all the new households and all the new jobs that we project to go in the certain areas of the region. What happens to traffic if we don't do any of the projects that are on that map in front of you versus what happens if we add all the projects that are on the map in front of you. And if the road is blue, it means by building all the projects, we've taken 24-hour daily traffic off the roads. Anywhere where it's red or orange, we've added traffic for various reasons. The black dashed lines are those three major projects that Tim was talking about. So way at the bottom center, you can see the Exit 36 southbound ramp. Going up the middle of Hudson there is that southern, the remnants of the circumferential highway, that Hudson connector. And then at the north, we have the version of the North Bridge that goes all the way from 102 near the Hudson-Litchfield line, all the way past Daniel Webster Highway and connects to a new Exit 9 on the Turnpike. So just to run through a couple specifics, so you can see kind of at a glance where we're improving the traffic picture and where some of that burden has been shifted to because of these new roads, but just to look at a few specifics. So by doing all this stuff, we've taken traffic currently projected or currently occurring at 33,000 vehicles per weekday on the Taylor Falls Bridge in both directions over the river, and we've cut it down to 18,500 by 2040 by the inclusion of all those projects. On Route 102, kind of up near Alvern on the way to Litchfield, Londonderry, we've gone from 16,000 to 6,000. That's obviously because of people can now get on that North Bridge and get over to the western part of the region before they get down into the center of Hudson. The Main Street Bridge in Nashua, we've gone from 21,000 to 15,500. Some of that drop is because of the Broad Street Parkway, which is already in the model because it is on the ground now, and some is because of that kind of bypass idea where people coming from the western side of the region have already, instead of coming all the way through Nashua to get to Hudson, they've been able to go up to the Turnpike and use that new Exit 9 to get across. And because of, like Tim said, because of the presence of that new southbound exit to the mall, we've cut traffic kind of between Spitbrook and the mall on DW Highway from 24,000 to about 16,000, so that is a pretty dramatic decrease. As I said, there are some consequences, obviously, but in looking at it, most of these roads where the traffic is being added have the capacity to handle this. And some of the other ones you'll see, the colors represent a % increase, so just because it's dark red doesn't mean we're adding tens of thousands of cars. Some of it is, it's on a percent basis. So if the road was already at, 2,500 cars per day, just by adding 500 or 1,000 cars per day, that's a pretty big jump in percent, but it's coming nowhere close to putting the road over capacity or stretching it beyond its control. So Henry Burke Highway, which obviously becomes a pretty important connector to get over to the DW Highway connection of that North Bridge. We've doubled traffic there, but if you can picture that, that's a pretty wide road. Greeley Street in Hudson is kind of one of those neighborhood roads that we'd have to look at. So that goes from 4,800 to 10,750 because if you kind of picture the old circumferential highway that goes all the way around, that looks like it fills in that gap, that northern gap between 102, or 111, excuse me, going north towards 102. So you can see what the benefits of the full ring would have been there. So one more thing, another way we can use the model to kind of show improvements and changes to the network is this idea of roads over capacity. So every road has a certain capacity that can carry theoretically over a 24-hour period based on how many lanes it has and whether it's a controlled access highway or it's in downtown or it's a suburb, if it has a median and all these kind of characteristics. So we like to look at roads that are over capacity, which lead to congestion, obviously, and those that are under. So by doing nothing by 2040, every road in the bright red there would be over capacity. Some of these are obviously over capacity already. By building all the projects, only these roads, and you can't really tell the difference, but you can in a minute. So only the roads in dark red by building all the projects over capacity, which means that we've brought all those segments in green under capacity. Again, that doesn't mean that there's no other segments in the region where we've improved volume. This is just kind of an arbitrary math thing of capacity 1 or above to capacity below 1. But it is this tipping point of congestion, so we kind of like to choose that and show all the places where we've improved it enough to make it no longer congested under those that criteria. So that's the model stuff, and I think we're transitioning there.
So we've talked a lot, and so what we want to try to do is talk over our slides and then open it up to you for some discussion, because really, like I said at the beginning, that this is sort of that kickoff of the next 2 years of work for transportation planning and the opportunity to start really rethinking maybe some of these big projects or trying to move some of them forward, or any other smaller projects in the region that you feel are important. So sort of in thinking along those lines is, what do you think of the projects that we have? Are there other projects that are out there that we haven't talked about? And I'm happy to stop talking and hear from somebody.
If we could go around the table first. Tim always
I forget to do
forgets.
the introductions. It's my bad.
We could go around the table and do introductions, so when we have our conversation, we know who's talking.
Good idea.
Hi, Bill Collins, Hudson Planning Board.
Glenn Monica, Hudson Planning Board.
Paul Inderbitzen, I'm the town moderator, but I was on the planning board in the 80s when we did the corridor studies.
George Hall, Commissioner, NRPC.
Jim Bass, Hudson Conservation Commission and Commissioner on the Energy.
Dan Kelly, Planning Board, Nashua.
Dave Robbins, Planning Board, Nashua.
Kimberly Fleming, Planning Board, and
Troy Brown, Town Administrator, Litchfield.
Nancy Mabel, New Hampshire DOT.
Dave Smith, New Hampshire DOT, Bureau of Turnpikes.
Colin Lentz, I'm from Stratford Regional Planning Commission, so they're another NPO over on the Seacoast area. I'm new to the transportation planning world, so I'm here to learn from the pros and see how they do it. We just finished up our Metro Plan update, but there's always room to improve.
Tom Young, Litchfield Planning and NRPC Commissioner.
Kevin Lynch, Litchfield, Building Inspector, but I was one of the originals on the circumventional design for Litchfield, and it hasn't seen the light of day yet.
John Cashel, Town Planner in Hudson.
Dave Hennessy, Zoning in Pelham and NRPC Commissioner.
Excellent.
So now we'll try.
Now we
Now we can talk about, now we all know each other, we can talk about the projects, right? You made a good point, and I think it's one that you can't miss around here, is that you know, the planning commission started 50 some odd years ago now. A lot of it around the idea of circumferential highway and river crossings. In fact, I didn't pull it out, but I have a
We
bridge
have one.
location and arterial study from 1960. This was actually to build the second half of Taylor Falls. So it was a Veterans Memorial Taylor Falls is what we really should be calling it. Is that the right division? But anyway, but this is a study from then. So there's a long history of transportation needs in this region, particularly when it comes to east-west travel and getting across the river, so.
In Litchfield, the Charles Bancroft Highway, AKA Route 3A, was a dirt road, and the guy offered money to build a bridge from the center of town over to Merrimack. Town folks over there decided, well, we need to get up, go north-south first, so they paved the road. That was back way, well, the bridges have been a big discussion.
Is there any thoughts on where folks want to see it go in the region? Does anyone have any input on the overall idea of trying to move this forward at some point? Dan?
Could Ryan explain a little bit more about what goes into the modeling and what assumptions he's made?
I could.
Yeah, I bet she could.
For
we'll
the
let-
future, or how we calibrate the base year, or?
No, you had a chart up there saying that these are the roads that are congested. What assumptions did you make to say that?
So that is what the model is telling us the 24-hour volume will be in 2040. And we know the.
Based on what,
Based-
economic growth of 10%?
So we have
No
the.
rail? What are your assumptions when you put up a chart like that?
So the data inputs for the model, whether it's today's model or the model for 25 years from now, are households. So in the future, we have a population projection model that Jen put together. And from there, it shows where the population is growing or shrinking in every town by 2040. We convert that into households, and we use town input to place those new households or take them away in cases where population is dropping, based on what the towns told us, our communities told us for, we think that development is going to happen here. So if the population projections, for instance, without getting too far in the weeds, told us that Hudson was going to grow by 1,000 people by 2040, and when we met with representatives from Hudson, they told us, we're pretty sure of some developments that are going to happen in Hudson here, here, and here, and they equal 1,000 people, then that's where we put them. If they said, we know of about 500 households, then we targeted 500, and we sprinkled another 500 around other places that are buildable, using our build-out methodology. So that's where we get the household changes. The economic changes come from economic projections from the state, and they're by industry and by town. So we kind of do that similarly. We split them into towns first, and then into the zone, the traffic analysis zones within each town based on town input that said, we're expecting a retail complex might go here, or we think this industrial park is going to explode in 2035. So for your 2040 model, have X number of jobs in that area of the region there. So those are kind of the two main things. And then, like I said, for this particular question that you had, every road in the model has an expected capacity over a 24-hour basis. So for instance, your normal 2-lane road in a suburban area is 16,600 cars per day. And so the model spits out a 24-hour volume, and we compare that to the capacity, and anything that's more than 16,600 on those particular roads would light up red, and if it's not, it wouldn't. So
Fundamentally, your inputs come from the state, from towns within.
the employment projections were kind of at the mercy of the state on, yes. The household and the population projections we used to, but then we started developing them in-house about 5 years ago, based on some migration trends, birth and death rates, and kind of simple survival cohort math like that. So.
And depending on the community, those projections are showing anywhere from 0.5% to just over 1% of annualized growth.
Okay. So your confidence level is pretty high.
Yeah. As high as you can be with who's going to be around in 30 years.
And it's conservative.
And it depends on a lot of other things.
Yeah, I mean, that's, not to get into it too far, but that's one of the challenges of, long-range transportation planning is, what's the cost of gas 25 years from now? We're assuming that things will sort of go along at a, you know, a rate that we can all maintain and we can all live a similar lifestyle. But I feel better about the population projections and the data that we have now than the stuff that we had a few years back. I think it was clearly too optimistic. We looked at the 101 corridor study from 2002, and it projected a lot of growth out in the western part of the region that we just haven't seen. And there's a lot of projects proposed out in that area that are based on a lot of growth that hasn't happened. So I think the data that we have now is better, and I think everyone's gotten better at projecting it, so.
Tim.
John.
Being involved with the region, it has been pretty dramatic how the population has slowed, especially since 2000. And when discussions started, people started talking about the slowing population, after this area has experienced tremendous amounts of growth in the last 4 decades of the last century, to realize that the population has slowed so dramatically, it's hard for people to accept that. So when you're talking about, traffic projections, going down 50% if we do these road improvement projects, it's a hard pill to swallow when you think of the area as being a very attractive place for people to live. And we really don't know, what's going to happen 10, 20, 30 years from now. The immigrant population, just people moving here from Massachusetts, which is a traditional situation where they go up the highway and they build in areas that weren't planned for, initially. But we have 93 being widened. The projections for population increase just with that project is 100,000 more people moving up here. So, there are a lot of ifs, ands, and buts involved with any projections. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, it's difficult. I mean, we make the best assumptions we can based on the data that we have. And, so right now, I feel pretty comfortable with where it's at. And this is part of the reason we look at this every couple of years, because we got to try to stay ahead of those changes and on top of it. So.
I don't want to talk too parochial, but I'm the town planner for Hudson, and here we are sitting in Hudson. One of the issues that has really garnered a lot of attention lately is the amount of traffic in the PM congestion on Lowell Road. So there's a strong interest in trying to address that and how to possibly effectively address it, not 20, 30, 40 years from now, but, what can we do in the near term to improve that situation?
Yeah, we have, I'm going to see if I can back up to, I'm going to have to go backwards quite a bit here, I think, but if somebody sees me go by, it's just, they stop. Am I there? Next one. Yeah, so that's the traffic trends over the last 15 years. Now that's 24-hour volumes. It doesn't necessarily account for fluctuations in the peak, which is, I think, where people get the most frustrated and experience the delay. That's better captured here in terms of the dips in the speed that are shown on these graphs. But so some of the things we've been doing actually in the last several months to couple years has been trying to collect this data on a regular basis. This was the probe data that Julie mentioned. We've got some travel time runs, I believe, where we've actually gone out and driven the corridor to collect actual data for how long it takes to get from point A to point B to point C, break the corridor up into segments, and we have that data now ready for, analysis and potential improvements. And this is the forum to start that conversation for projects to address this particular corridor. I mean, if this is something that we want to try to do, we're talking the long range, we're talking that 20-plus year window. You introduce it now, it doesn't have to stay in that 20-plus year window. If it's something that we can prioritize and see the need for and move it forward, that could be done. So,
just to stay on the subject for a little bit here, we've recognized the problem southbound in the AM and trying to get onto the Sagamore Bridge, and the town realizes that we really need to add a second lane from Hafner's down to Sagamore Bridge. That'll help with the queuing. it's the PM traffic. And in discussing that particular issue recently with town people, trying to figure out a way to actually do it without the circumferential boulevard being built, which is the ideal scenario. There's a lot of money involved with it, a lot of environmental issues, but to possibly develop a plan to create 2 lanes of travel that would be northbound on Lowell Road, not to create a total bottleneck at Library Street and Chase and Ferry, but to carry possibly 2 lanes northbound on Lowell Road to Library Street and through the confluence of the intersections of Ferry and 102, and carry it 2 lanes of full travel all the way up Route 102 to a certain point. And that would really help with that PM congestion. That if everybody, I'm sure everybody here has experienced that, you know, to wait a half hour, 45 minutes to get to Litchfield from, you know, getting off the highway.
Although it's worth the wait.
Yeah, it is for the destination, but it's pretty unbearable for people, and that's, you know, it's not just Hudson people, that's a regional issue. And thinking along the lines that, you know, a less expensive way to lessen that congestion would be to implement 2 lanes northbound along Lowell Road. And, you know, that may be one of those off-the-wall, you know, things that hasn't been looked at type of improvement.
Yeah, that's the type of thing that we could look at, you know, through our travel demand model and our other modeling tools. So, and that's why, you know, when you come to TAC and when the commissioners come to the commission meeting, those are the things that have to come forward so that we can start to work on those particular issues. So, there's opportunity, and this is the place to start that conversation. What I would encourage you to do, and anyone else that has projects or ideas like that, is to bring them forward to us so we can try to figure out what we can, you know, analysis that we can actually do in-house and help you make the, you know, take those planning steps to make the case for those projects. So there's got to be something else going on.
This is just a fresh idea. I'm not
Hey, it's
springing
all right.
something on you that's been in my mind for a long time, but, you know, this discussion has really started to bubble up again, and the town's really trying to move forward in alleviating that particular traffic congestion, because it's just got us by a stranglehold. You know.
Dave, good.
One of the things, unforeseen consequences in taking that route, and I've done that. I've had my little doohickey on my smartphone, Waze, pull me up into 111, and then drive up on Robinson Road and catch over onto 102. Now, that's putting loads on streets whose residents never expected to see that kind of traffic. But in some cases, the technology is pulling some of this. So the folks around this table and folks watching this here in Hudson know there are shortcuts that those folks from down south in Massachusetts have no clue about, and they don't want them to know about it. But Waze, that program and other programs are teaching them how to do it and dispersing it. So yeah, technology, you add a lane, but the equivalent of a lane is already being diverted. That's one of the reasons you're seeing some losses on some of these roads being pulled off.
Wasson Road is, in effect, the
Right.
circumferential highway with 2 lanes. And people, a lot of people make their way up to 111 and through Hudson that way. So that's not really a secret.
It's not a secret, especially when using, even strangers in the town are getting pulled off now.
Another comment over here.
Okay, I'm gonna bring in the Litchfield effect. Okay, we're a town that the only way to get to us is north-south, okay? Coming into Hudson, my wife she tests the bridge, and the Webster Street bypass is a ticket, okay? But coming into Hudson, you got 102, coming in, you got the dairy crowd, the London dairy crowd, all coming in, you're all trying to centralize in the center of Hudson. It's failing in a sense in the morning. That's why the bridge is the key back in 1980, was to try to pull some of the center traffic out of Hudson, okay? Because everybody's just trying to go to Nashua, okay, to get into the roads over there or bypass and go over because if I remember right, back in the 80s and the 90s, there was a lot of quick growth in the, I'll say, the western part of Nashua. That's when Kessler's and everything else was going, so everything was going in that direction. We still have that issue where you're trying to cross the bridge. And you got a 20-minute wait on Snake Hill, as we used to call it, where RDF is, and you sit there at Garrison Farms, AKA, and you're waiting to get up to the light. And you're talking 20, 25 minutes just in that stretch. So it's the bottlenecking of 111 and 102 coming in. And then you got the growth going out at night. Okay? I think Lower Road is a good step on that, where that takes it. With the Sagamore Bridge coming in, that took a little more off. The circumvention was not talked about. It was Sagamore Bridge was not built when this was talked about at the time. So it's the 102 and the 111 conversion into the downtown of Hudson. That's hectic, especially in the morning. The bridge taking that traffic to the north, pulls it out of Hudson. The bridge to the south will help you pull some of the traffic out of that area. That was a goal right from the beginning, was trying to get it into Nashua, get to the Everett as fast as you can. So I'm still a promoter of we bottleneck everybody in the Port Hudson. That's basically it. First thing in the morning and same thing at night. Trying to get out of the Nashua has always been fun, okay? That side of the bridge is even better. So I'm a firm believer that you got to look at another bridge. The bottom line is a bridge. North, you got the one south, now you got to work on the one north. Bringing one on 111 to 102 is another thought, instead of bringing it over to Sagamore. You know, because you got the Lower Road problem. That's what you've got in there. And getting to the Everett is the key. Not just Route 3, okay, is getting it over to the highway to get the exit. That's going to pull a lot, okay? That's how I feel about it, and I've said it for 40 years.
Yeah.
And Jesus.
And so one of the things I want to make sure everyone understands is we showed those sort of three major improvements. We can also break out the benefits of any one of them individually.
That's what I'm saying.
And there are benefits just to a North Bridge and not doing the lower half of what we'll call the Hudson Connector, and vice versa. They all have they could stand alone on their own merits, I guess is my point.
Lower Road by itself, if you want to took that. That was nothing years ago with the churches and everything down there, but industry is what brought it up.
I think one of the concerns that, right now, they're expensive they're expensive projects today, they'll be expensive 10, 20 years from now. The window that could close on us that would cause greater expense is the DOT currently holds a lot of right-of-way. And I don't think they want to hold the right-of-way much longer. And, Nancy and Dave, you're both here, you could speak to that maybe a little bit, but at some point, the DOT needs to let that land go if they're not going to move forward with it. And if that happens, we lose an opportunity to implement either of these projects on any means of, reasonable cost. So I don't know if there's anything you can share at this point or not.
I guess what I can say, in my previous position at DOT, I was the project manager for the circumferential highway, and I'm sort of glad to hear people still remember it, and human need and all is not lost yet. So, to answer the question on the right-of-way, we do periodically go through
Inventory.
kind of assessments of what we own and what the value of it is, and probably the most valuable piece of property that the DOT owns is the piece right at the end of Sagamore Bridge across 3A, where you would take off.
To the other half.
We know its value, and every so often we get pushed a little to look at what the value of all these properties are that we own. There is a layout in place, which is the official process that we go through to establish a project. So the layout exists. We do own the corridor and the whole south segment, which is what is, actually, we kind of own 1.5 corridors. We show this piece that the town of Hudson has looked at for the Hudson Connector. It does go through a kind of environmentally sensitive areas, and then we were investigating, we were starting to buy another piece, a little, the northwest, kind of another run of a corridor. So we own that. Most of that was bought in the 60s. And then going north of there, we kind of own a checkerboard. You know, as we go up, connect up to 102, we own a big chunk up in there. We kind of own the checkerboard going across Litchfield. We own some at Route 3 in Merrimack and Harris Pond. So we haven't undone it, but there certainly is a high level awareness that we own it and that it's valuable. And we are a property manager. We rent and maintain buildings and things. So sometimes we think about that, of how much longer we want to do that. But no decisions have been formally made to undo it.
Yeah, I think it's just something that, as a region, we need to keep in mind, and as the communities of this, especially the 4 communities between Nashua, Merrimack, Litchfield, and Hudson, that there may be a window that could close on any opportunity to build on these parcels. At least do it easily, with less work. So something I just wanted to make sure everyone understood. We've been talking a long time about trying to bring together the leaders of each of the communities, the elected officials of each of those 4 communities, to talk about the North Bridge, which may be something that we have come out of this process. You know, so we called it a North Bridge Summit. We could host it at NRPC to, you know, have that conversation about, are we going to move forward or not, and you know, that will sort of dictate what we do in our planning documents. But you can show the benefits, and I think we can clearly show that. It's just a matter of, can we find a way to afford to do it. Tom?
I think while the state still has the land, it would be the ideal time to try and come to some consensus and let the state know if we're interested or not interested.
Yeah.
Because that would affect what they do in the
Absolutely.
near future.
I mean, from a historical perspective, it's a real tragedy with all the planning and land acquisition that took place, and, you know, and this project kind of was put in the dustbin, you know, put on the shelf and never moved forward. And that's what happens when projects take too much time to plan for. And, you know, generations come and go, and, you know, people lose perspective. And I'd say at this point in time, if there's any possibility of the circumferential in some manner, in some degree of being built, that would be a fantastic idea to have a summit and, you know, get all the players at the table. And, you know, let's come to some type of conclusion. You know, it's really sad to, you know, I've been here in Hudson as a town planner going on 14 years. And when I first got here, it was a possible reality, and then it wasn't. And then now it's just something people talk about, and you know, as a fictional issue.
I've had 2 kids in the meantime. That's a lot of driving.
And we know personally people that moved to Hudson thinking that they'd be able to easily access the highway to go to and from, and, you know, for that to not happen, and, you know, many years have gone by, and still it's just someone's dream at this point.
I guess I would add too, from my perspective, one of the things I was always impressed with is that the towns zoned around it, you know, and set up their different zoning districts to promote whatever kind of the development they wanted,
Yeah.
that were kind of appropriate to an interchange. And so you all haven't been able to really realize that either by the highway not being there.
And in Hudson, all the slip ramps were designed for 111, 102, the widening projects, you know, there was a lot of planning that went into it, and for it to pretty much go to the wayside, it's just,
Same as Litchfield.
yeah.
We got the side roads in, the land was zoned based off the circumferential highway. You look at the zoning it is today, it hasn't changed. Jen knows that. One of the other things too is that our economics of the town have been affected. You buying the land, one estate, let it set there, we can't charge taxes, not one of the things we like to do. okay? And the other side is that we have buildings that have been rented that I know you were talking about decommissioning a few of them for justifiable reasons, okay? They're just falling apart. So it's the matter of this thing's been set in the circumferential is what I'm thinking of. That second bridge, North Bridge in between is the key connector for Hudson, I think, to get some of the load off your center. Help your lower road, I think, a lot better. Help the tax base for Litchfield a lot better. Still keep the rural effect if you drive through, okay? I think it's one of the next plans. I feel personally that Litchfield's got to look at this and Hudson too together as a team. I'm not one of the leading powers of the town of Litchfield, okay? There's one over there, okay? And he's got 5 more he's got to deal with, okay?
So this is sort of the 800-pound gorilla that's sort of hanging
I'm
over the
used to it.
region. What else? Anything else? Hudson, Nashua projects that we're, okay, we got about maybe 5 more minutes, and I want to move on to the next topic.
This is an idea of what the reality is. In your opinion, which would be a more likely scenario, the circumferential or winning a lotto ticket?
It's probably the circumferential.
Good, so it's less than 14 million to 1.
That's okay. There is a chance. That's a chance. So,
Encouraging.
So, you know, I think when if we take this next step of bringing folks together, some of the elected officials, some of the decision makers to talk about this at that level, then we can maybe talk about funding and invite the DOT and turnpikes to come along. So there may be ways that we can, you know, in the long term fund something like this. So. You have to be an optimist if you're a transportation planner. If you don't, you're done. You just might as well give up. Any other things in Nashua Hudson projects that aren't talked about that are needed?
Anything with Rickett, River Road, what's the crossing down there that needs work? Where we've been looking to get a stop sign, but we've never been able to get it. Sherburne Road.
Oh, Sherburne Road, yeah. No, that's town of Pelham, right? There's also.
Well, we've got the Pelham end that we're looking at for the Mammoth Road, Sherburne Road intersection. I'm working with the town now. And then we did the road safety audit. Actually, we did both ends at the same time. We did the Dracut Road and Sherburne Road end. And I stepped away from NRPC for a little time, so I'm not sure what happened in the meantime, after the recommendations came out. I know there's the owner across the street from the intersection. There were some issues there with what we could do, and
That was going to be the installation of a chevron,
There you go.
reinstallation.
So
Yeah.
we are looking at both ends of that road, and Pelham is pretty active right now at their end. So again, John, if there's something more that we can do, just like we're helping out Pelham, if there's something you need us to do to look at that intersection a little more closely, we can do some additional analysis for that. That's pretty straightforward and pretty routine for us, so. Troy and then Dan. That's okay.
We have and I'm not sure if it's with this planning here or not, but I think you've heard about the concerns with Cutler Road, the intersection of Cutler and 102.
Yeah.
And it's very, very difficult to make a left-hand turn on the 102 heading east to Londonderry. So, I don't know, it seems like we need a traffic signal light there or something. It's the intersection.
Yeah.
It's difficult for residents in Litchfield to actually get to the 102 unless you go down through Londonderry, take West Road.
Yep.
There's no traffic signal light.
Yeah, that's the type of thing, again, it's good that you're here, good that you're talking about that, because we have a lot of, as you saw in that long-range plan, a lot of really expensive projects.
Yeah.
We're kind of lacking stuff that are pretty easy to implement and things that we could actually maybe make a difference for and affect people's lives in a short term. So would I, again, bring that one forward to us, reach out to either Julie or Jen or myself, and we can come talk with you about what we may be able to help with and see if we can't get something lined up.
That's
I-
one that was gonna get rebuilt as
With
part of the
the
circumferential.
Circumferential,
And
yeah.
it was gonna connect through to what we were calling Industrial Drive over onto 3A. And that was actually that was the
So they've been
first
waiting
thing that
30
was
years,
gonna get
but,
built
yeah.
was Industrial Drive.
I had one more over here first, Dan.
Mr. Quickie, can you bring us up to speed on exit 36? Is the state of Massachusetts coming on board? Is there something that has to be done to coalesce this project?
Yes. Yeah, so as I pointed out in this graphic here up on the screen, it's largely in Massachusetts. Mayor Lozo, former Mayor Lozo, worked a lot to try and reach out to Tingsboro. We didn't quite make the connection into the higher state level government in Massachusetts because there was a transition from Deval Patrick to Governor Baker, so that didn't happen. Mayor Donchis is well aware and very supportive of the project, and he's been working with his staff to try and make the connections at the state level so the two DOTs can talk to each other and the appropriate level of state government talk to each other about finding a way to figure out how we could do this. Because again, it's a huge benefit in southern New Hampshire and Nashua. And
But is somebody doing something? Is there a
I know the mayor's office has been working on a plan to reach out to the Mass DOT and the governor's office in Massachusetts.
who might that be?
Mayor staff is either Ally or Manny. I don't know their last names. Ally McNaid. So, and you have one more?
When we were talking about other ways that you can filter through the landscape, one thing that would take some of the pressure off of Wasson Road is Pelham Road. Except you have to be a real adrenaline junkie to hit the intersection at Lowell. You take your life in your hands. So an improvement there would probably remove some of the pressure off of Lowell.
And again, those are the things that if we can work those through either John or somebody so that we can take a look at it and then, help John out and report back as to what might be able to be done. That'd be great. So.
One more, different location.
Great.
Page Road and 102 Hudson. Okay, which is basically Litchfield till you get to the last 100 feet, okay? I've had the constituents come to me just recently about putting a light. It came at one time to the state to put a light. You have known about this, John, a couple times. It came to me again yesterday. Somebody nabbed me in the parking lot saying we gotta do something. Again, I'm gonna go back to the circumvention highway again to a degree on that, because the Albuquerque Highway of Litchfield, which is the north-south corridor, was to go to the industrial drive, okay, to take the traffic off that. Okay, so that circumvention, again, bridge, was to pull this traffic out of those two, Cutler Road one and the Page Road, to eliminate some of the, because the only way from Litchfield residents to town, go to Albuquerque, hook a left or right, hit Route 3A, hit Webster Street again, there's another line, hit 102, if you gotta turn left, like you wanna go to Derry, it's, in the morning, it's just impossible. Because of the light sequence that was put at West Road, you get a block of cars coming through, you just can't get through it. So it's just, all the terminology, and what happens here affects somebody down there. So that's another area that we've had discussions with traffic issues.
Most of us, when we're dealing with our daily trips, I mean, I always try to plan ahead not to do left-hand turns. If
Oh,
at
I
all
do a
possible.
circle most of the time,
You know, it's, like, I'll take a right just to get out of any one of these main corridors and, pick my place to turn around. It's usually at a traffic signal. But, as you pointed out, and I was running down 102 the other day, heading northbound. I'm watching people trying to take those lefts out of there to go towards Londonderry, and it's like,
Tough.
wow.
Churches, any business, same issue.
All right, so last little bit here. This is not going to be very riveting for the TV audience, but I'm going to have Jen explain this last little activity. This is really sort of a...
Oh, it's just that puzzle.
It's the puzzle. It's the way to prioritize. It's to get a sense of how you would prioritize the projects in the region or where your priorities lie. It's just a different way to look at it, and Jen's going to explain how this works.
All right, you got a few things in front of you. There's a couple of you that have already done this. Troy, if you really want to do it, we have another setup here. Okay. So you've got in front of you a game board. And this game board represents approximately $476 million of transportation funding within the box. And each little grid cell represents approximately 1 million in transportation funding. You also have a bag full of transportation projects that are scaled to about what each of the projects costs. Some of them are specific projects that are the ones on your map that we talked about this evening. Some of them are more generic projects. If you have some generic projects that you want to use, but they're really specific projects in your mind, that it's like one of these intersections, you know, you can play an intersection improvement and you can then jot down specifically what that project is. So a couple ground rules. You have to color inside the lines. You cannot trade pieces with your neighbor. And you cannot overlap your pieces. You can put as many pieces as you want in the board or as few. You do not have to fill your 476 million. But I'll tell you, there's a lot more than 476 million in the bag. So no matter what, you have to make some choices. You also have a big 11 by 17 that's kind of like your game key, you know, that you get with every board game that tells you what you have for pieces. And it gives you a whole list of what's in there. Trying to think if there was anything else. Priority, yes, priority. High priority on the left, going to lower priority on the right. There's no priority in the vertical axis. That's just extra dollars for your high priority or your low priorities. Yeah, that's one of the things that folks have found is one of the easier things to do because the little pieces are just a big mess. But the easiest thing to do is if you have bigger projects that you want to make sure you fit into the game, put the big projects down first, and then fill in with the little pieces. And that's about it.
Do you have a finished picture of a finished one on your camera?
On my camera? Yeah, I do. You know what? Do we have internet? I'm afraid this is connected.
Bye-bye, guys, I did this.
I can show, yeah, let me pull up one.
Oh, so we can see, right?
Want me to get on the internet for you?
Yeah. It's just that we have no screen, so I can't see where internet is from, because the chair's in the way.
Right.
If you move the chair and direct me to a start button. I'm in Windows 10, so, perfect. I can't see that far away.
Oh, okay. If I can log into OneDrive?
You gotta do it from up there, though.
If you go up to the, let's see, those three little lines up in the right-hand corner, that's the,
Yeah, but I just have to,
there you go.
I just have to search for OneDrive.
You're all set.
Where's the login button?
I think that's the problem.
Top right,
There
in
it
the
is.
blue bar, yeah.
How many pieces is this puzzle?
Nothing bad. I know, right? Flowers. Oh my gosh. My son. Oh gosh, there's great pictures of me. We'll scroll past that.
Scroll.
Alright. Give you some examples. These are a little dark, but I'll just scroll through so you can see some examples of other folks that have done this before. So the other thing I'll ask is when you're done, leave your game set up and we'll walk around and take photographs of all of your completed game boards because Karen, who's not here tonight, is going to get the privilege of tallying how many times each of the pieces are used across all of the game boards. So here's someone who's the jigsaw master, who squeezed something in on every little grid cell there was. Oh, this is Simpson. These are even cents. Yeah, let's close this. Yeah, so, folks take different approaches. Some people don't want to spend money. Some don't follow the rules. No, I'm just kidding. I know you're not going to follow the rules. It's okay. Oh, that's my dusty floor, my flowers. There we go. We'll leave that up there.
There's a right place.
We're in our building and look out the window and see the northbound cluster in the PM, but so it's
See, I came from Manchester, so I saw that.
yeah. Oh, and holiday, heading into the holiday weekend.
Oh, yeah,
It's just a nightmare going north right now.
Great big chunks of the
But getting that lane drop fixed, well, I mean, it's one of the high crash locations in the state. I had Michelle send me the crash data, which I took that slide out, but looking at the 5% list, and it's like, and granted, it's not a lot of the really nasty accidents. It's volume of accidents, but there are some bad ones out there.
Well, yeah, put my favorite project with him. No, I just think looking at what is on his list too. The town officials from Hudson.
Free or, yep.
Okay, so it's really just the half, it's not a whole, like,
Right,
circle half.
now it's gonna be,
Calling it
now it's gonna be basically three pieces.
Right, the
This
afternoon.
piece, the bridge piece. Originally, like I said, originally, it was and that extra piece didn't really gain. It was a circle to nowhere. This part of it made sense. Because it got rid of the traffic. This part makes sense, because it gets rid of the traffic down. And the new bridge area makes sense.
Oh, yeah, in the morning, I hit that traffic on Hudson going
Yeah, I know.
past the high
Yeah.
school,
Yeah.
all the way
That
down.
sucks.
And then coming home, if I go with 3, I get off at that exit 2.
Well, see, my daughter teaches.
Tell me what you want to put down besides this.
To just let it it could happen. But, everybody wants a percent. Not everybody gets it. Don't want it.
Yeah, said it in public.
But if they
Unless I go down West Street, but
go down west, come up the back.
Sometimes I've taken up Carmenter Road, and I've, let's just
What,
say
what
I
street you take your
misgauged
life in
it,
your hands?
and I
West
got to go
Street,
down the breakdown
yeah.
lane to build up speed, there's a truck coming.
Yeah, Continental, Continental now, his truck traffic comes down Page Road every day.
Yeah.
Because they can't use the, he won't let them use the Albuquerque because the road is, okay? Or else they'll come down, if you get London,
Figure out how to
is still
balance it
working
too.
on the curfew of West Road.
And then,
Camp
so
One,
we're, we're a little more
That
low tech
happened in '78 when he
models
said
and
that.
stuff.
For Scott Concrete.
And so I was brand new. I
Continental
did
trucks
the
are like-
project solicitation 2 years ago, and
Yeah.
I didn't know how they estimated project costs, so I had trouble, like,
Yeah.
getting new projects from.
It
Originally,
was,
But
it was
fix
supposed
that
to
this
go all the
round,
way
so
around.
That's where we
come right
got
through
the,
here and
like,
go back
the
to the avenue.
priorities
This
and
one
and
means
things.
finishing, you know, just
This one
through
here,
Hudson, or is that
that's
the
this-
original 40, I got it, is that the original 40
That's,
there?
that's this piece here.
And that's tough for
That's
Litchfield.
the 111.
Yeah. Which I don't,
It helps the area maybe.
is this yours?
Yeah.
I didn't get,
You got one? It's in your hand.
Okay, that's, I just
Oh,
need the
it's
history
over
of
there.
the 40 year, oh,
Yeah,
that's fine,
yeah,
okay.
that's basically what it is.
Okay.
I think that's a
Alright, so we have an extra set?
Yep.
Alright, I'm gonna get it out of the way.
that one here.
Okay, I'll take that one away, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Jen, I'm sorry.
I'm not doing cover line.
I'm done.
You had one of these like perfect ones last time, I mean, that might even be yours up there, I don't know. You're nuts. You don't want us to pave your roads?
We gotta witness his game.
Don't look at me.
Anywhere near
That's the two people at the end.
Press his page.
Well, then say that it's a priority, man.
I'm trying to find something here, reconstruction intersections.
Yeah, you get it.
No, you don't have one.
Oh, yes, we do.
What is it, in Braille?
Local intersection, there you go. $1 million.
We had a
Every piece of land in the city, right?
It's only money.
We do, because
Where do I put them?
Anywhere you want.
Okay, they're going
No,
in.
in the
they're a high
squares though.
priority, you want them down towards this
High,
side of the
high,
board. If
high.
there's an intersection, you get some bigger ones.
You know how building inspectors are.
Can't nail it, it's no good.
It's like movie, Aaron Brockovich stuff.
Yeah, it's like,
Right.
Reconstruction of Route 3A.
There you go.
Yeah, that probably was mine.
Here, I'm gonna put that
This
there.
is your sheet, you're going.
Yep.
So Kevin, make sure like you get specific things, like,
did,
so
I
your,
wrote
your
them up there
road
at the top.
reconstruction, write down 3A.
I remember my.
So if you get something specific that you wanna make sure we take into mind,
Two priorities, huh?
Oh, Jen, I get
Guess that worked too.
the new water main now today.
oh yeah?
Yeah.
Are they gonna build it?
Oh, Jen,
I get the
that's
one
still
with
in
the plans.
negotiation legally.
These like the positive ones,
It's all
it's
way.
like, of course they are. You're like, oh, they're in negotiation.
Yes.
When you have the state, Saint Gobain, the town with 7 demands, if you saw them.
Yeah.
And you got 2 class action suits going on at the same time, civil. There's some issues here. And you got people who don't wanna tie in, they're gonna say no. Still gotta get them to sign off.
I wanna say when we went out there, they were,
And like we
one of
said,
them was
like they
drivable.
said the other night at the meeting,
And one of them, no, the one that wasn't
half the
drivable yet
people,
was off,
Saint Gobain,
the
the
Senate
owners,
Belknap or Melendi.
are in Europe. They getting ready to go on vacation for a month.
Fives, I think. And they were doing construction, they couldn't get down.
Luckily, they're not gonna touch our road.
The house is on.
Yeah,
I
okay.
thought they might cap, well, see, we were on the Manchester water already. But they're gonna come down Pine Street.
Okay.
And south of us, they can't go because of the culvert.
55.
So they're gonna come out from ours and go north to Manchester. Now they still come up Pine Street. That's where ours comes from.
Yeah.
Just come down Pine and go both ways. We just needed to pave Manchester part of 3A.
Then they get here and realize they can get to us here up in,
No, you good. You good.
how many
A
times?
lot of people take a while.
Right, yep. Yep, yep.
Sorry, Jen?
Okay, you got all your pieces for
Our neighborhood, where we bought 5 years ago, we've got friends that are moving in.
just like any other landowner. I just wanted to ask you.
Oh, yeah.
Just before we get to
Yep.
cobblestone.
Yep.
You know what, I think we're waiting
That 100 units.
for this or maybe another follow-up.
There are some that, no third date, there's been a development that goes in phases and all. That's in 10 years.
Kevin Slatter.
This side of the,
You know Kevin Slatter.
I know the name, yeah.
He's together.
Yep. If you look at the charts, everyone's 20, 15 years from now, 10 years. Right.
I kind of.
Next thing, invest in nursing homes.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's where to be next.
You know what?
Yeah. Yep.
He kept on. So yes, I always see the buildings down there now.
I forget.
Got 3 of them right now that we've identified for demolition.
Yeah, I mean, that place,
Right, yep.
We just went through a solicitation. Are you talking,
Next to Bush's greenhouse.
yeah, I don't know the landmarks there, but I know there are 2 on Charles Bancroft Highway. One of them, I've been in discussions of trying to connect with Stephen Callow.
Hey, Jen?
Yeah.
Why are the new bus
We put a
routes
phone tag, you know what, he called me
like a
one day,
single
I called him
square?
once, we haven't been able to connect.
I'm just wondering about the new bus route
Yes.
square being a million. It's just like
So he wants to, or we've been in discussions relative to one.
well, just like the startup cost, or like long, so like getting it going and then it's on kind of on its feet is the assumption. Okay, okay.
Getting out of the address, but we solicited it for relocation because it does have historic city, historic aspects to it. We've got a document that we can develop.
There isn't much to that house. I just tell you that. 2 and 1 of the, yeah, 2 and 1 of 2 of those.
Okay.
That's the old ranch in the yellow page.
The one that does have.
Oh, okay.
historic,
Includes a year of operation.
15 Chelsea.
No, it's the one that has the stone veneer, the 2-car garage. Dairy Road, I believe.
That's no.
I know it's not 15
Did
Charles
Steven
Bank
say
Road.
it?
Mr. Callaway has it, so no. We've discussed it with the historic agency.
I know who built that. Back in the 50s.
Yep. That's not the position of the historic list. But I'll tell you, at this point, we've got a strategy in place where we can just document the historic elements of that property.
Yeah.
That and it's now, the only thing I'm trying to.
You going somewhere?
Well, what he wants to do is he wants to be able to refurbish it to some degree.
Yep.
And use it for an art gallery. Yes. 15 Charles Bancroft Highway, that residence. The gray barn type, standard cave type stuff.
Nice. Right on the water.
Or the town.
We're across the street.
Yeah,
It's
200 steps.
Yep.
Make it right out of the
gallery type of thing.
Sure. Nice. Pretty good weather.
We got a pool.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, like I said, so we've just been
Sure, yeah.
get him in the building and see what.
Nice to say you did it, but it's not that enjoyable sometimes.
What's the order?
Right.
No, he's been trying to. Yes, we've been playing phone tag, that's all.
We'll make it warm.
Never ever gets warm.
In Manchester.
Yeah, my kids will go to camp
Which
and
segment?
go
From
right in.
Manchester line up to the.
Okay, so 3A is
Yep.
Second Street.
Yeah.
No, this is south of the south. Border of the town.
Okay, I'm on the other side, I'll see the other side of town, right?
Yeah, you gotta go the other way.
That road's deplorable.
Yep.
Now, I know Manchester maintains our, if they have to keep it to state standard,
Well, it comes down to what they can identify for funding or not for that
That's
roadway.
Manchester, they took it over, the rights of that road.
Yes, yeah. Probably they took that over as an element of the airport access road being built. So I think the segment you're talking is from where the airport goes,
With the new
new
bridge.
segment between the bridge and the connector, right?
Yeah, well, the new bridge and the original.
Yep.
It's all, they've done some patching.
Yeah.
It's all fallen out.
When you're at the beach at Plum Island.
So it really comes down to what the town, or the city in that case wants to
The
do.
city has nothing really to do with that.
Right.
We don't have, we had
There's not a law here, just fix the
the
roads.
turnpike wouldn't, we wouldn't.
I can't,
The turnpike wouldn't.
I just wondered, you know, how the every is a state road,
First time up there.
but yet the city maintained, took over
Long
and
of a
maintained.
drive is that?
Yeah, I think you still have to meet state standards.
I got a nephew that's up in,
Well, I don't know that
Yeah, I know.
there's anything in writing or statute
Yeah,
that
okay.
would require them to
That's why I
to
didn't
do
know
that.
for sure.
Really comes down to what their plan is, what their funding availability
Oh,
is.
once you get past, that's about the end of it, Yarmouth, Portland, anything north of there, it's like,
I know that it's plenty of bubbles.
yes. If you find yourself close enough to a small town, it's probably pretty similar to around here, but if you get to Boston or anything, it's.
102, did they put it in?
And the center is both fog lines.
Okay, so yeah, I know we've done that in, the Turnpike, we've done it up in Milton, in Rochester area, on the Falcon Turnpike, and we've done it, my prior position, we've done it on 101, down in the Amherst and Milford area.
Yeah.
thank you.
There's not, there
With
was not
zippers in the
the other,
middle of the road and on the side of the
there
road
was
now.
an article the other day that said they're supposed to be doing Bristol down to Hudson.
Yeah,
how long have you been there?
I just had a meeting last Monday,
NRPC?
relative to the rumble strips.
You're all set?
Right, relative to,
Is that the same as you've been here?
it's really a polarizing discussion, because you get those folks that are saved by them,
Right, then you get the
that
people with
greatly
bicycles. that-
appreciate them. The bicyclists, but the folks that also live adjacent to them, in this case,
He was barely here.
camping
Couple months.
sites.
Because I see Ed all the time.
Businesses, and they don't appreciate them. So
Angie just
it's really,
started at,
you find the right location for
I
them.
noticed the one on two, they did it right, because when they come to a crossroad, they stop it, they back.
So that people,
Give them time to get over a little bit, which is a good thing.
yeah, yeah,
Personally, I like them, and I've seen, a lot of people have saved.
yeah.
I mean, that's follow her Facebook and I saw.
Done that one-on-one
Be
section.
so kind. We're happy.
You don't do those, 'cause they don't
That
have
section of 101 it's always been.
She goes,
Now, hopefully, that'll be all redone soon.
Yeah, I don't know the widening, the limits of widening. I know that we are,
yeah, we go
Right
through.
now, I think the first phase is from 114
yeah,
to
Maybe.
Walk
yeah.
I will, I'll try. Last time I went up, my brother went up there and picked some up on the way and I had some.
Talking like engineers from Liberty. They put it back
They may well be, I'm not familiar.
Which, well, so the thing is, they can do it there.